Have you ever wondered that when you started Ark, if you knew a little bit more, would your experience have been a little bit better? Well, in today's video, I'm giving you 10 things that I wish I knew when I started playing Ark Survival Evolved, because there's a lot. In at the number 10 spot, we have got Narcoberries. And what I mean by this is you can use Narcoberries to keep creatures asleep. I didn't know about Narcoberries or narcotics. The only thing that I really knew is you punch a dinosaur and you knock it out, and then you chuck whatever berries in it, and then boom, see if it tames. And I was really wondering about this torpor thing, and I noticed by punching it, the torpor went back up. But, you know, I didn't know anything about taming effectiveness back then. It's not great for taming effectiveness at all. And Narcoberries are a quick, dirty, and easy way, obviously, to get all of that nitty-gritty done. With the torpor, you can just get it back up without losing any taming effectiveness. Really, you will lose some of it because obviously with further consumption you'll lose a little bit, but it's so negligible. It is totally fine to use those Narcoberries. If you've got narcotics, that's great, but I didn't know about those either. Now, continuing on with the berries, Stimberries. And often I would run out of stamina in the most crucial moments. I'm sure it's all happened to us. There's a raptor chasing after us and we're running away from them, and we just run out of stamina and die. Well, if you keep Stimberries in your hotbar, you can nom down on those and then you can keep your stamina up. Yes, your water will go down, but in a very serious situation, it really does work effectively. And if I knew about that, I could have saved myself a heck of a lot of deaths when I started playing the game. Namely to raptors, because they are really, really annoying on the island when you're just going around the beaches and there's some raptors. Metal ore. This one sounds a little bit weird maybe, but I didn't know what metal ore was when I started playing the game. So I just mined loads and loads of rocks with my stone pickaxe until I got metal, and that's how I thought you did it. And it just took me hours and hours and hours to get anything done with metal tools. Then I discovered metal ore and I just realized absolutely how stupid I've been. But, you know, to my credit, they're usually up in the mountains, and I was up in the north where I started. I think I started North Zone 2 on the island, so it was a little bit out of the way, but still, I could have also done river rocks as well. That's another thing I didn't know about. But any kind of different rock apart from stone, but metal ore especially, if I knew about that, that would have saved me a lot of time in the early days when I just thought, oh, the only way to get metal is just by mining these rocks. I didn't even think to look it up. In number 7, I've got an interesting one, but I'm sure most of us did it when we were at the start of the game. If you know survival games, and obviously Ark's a survival game, survival sandbox game, you can't drink seawater in most survival games. You have to purify it on any kind of fire. You have to boil the water and get it out. Raft is a great example. Here's a clip of just some water being distilled. I think that's the word for it in Raft. You don't have to do that in Ark, and I did not know that. So I spent ages looking for little pockets of water, and there are a few. There's one in that sort of, I can't remember what it's called. I always call it the compound because Ibalistic Squid called it that. There's one up in the north section. It'll be on screen, and there's another one as well. I'll point arrows to both. I spent ages looking for those, and I did not realize that you could literally just drink the seawater. It doesn't make much sense, but you can do it, and I really wish I knew that when I was playing the game for the first time. Passive taming. Now, I knew about knockout tames because I've seen a few things on Ark, especially. I started to watch Ibalistic Squid series as well, because I was like, I'm playing this game. Why not watch his series? If you haven't watched it either, it is a really great one. There are 50 episodes to binge through, and it is truly a great series. I will leave a link to that in the description below if I actually remember to do that. But yes, I really did not know about passive taming at all. I would just knock out creatures, and when the Ichthyosaurus came out, I had no idea how to tame it, and I spent hours just knocking them out and wondering, why can't I put stuff in this? Like, why can't I feed this? And then I learned about passive tames and how passive taming works. And, you know, now it's second nature, but back then, especially when passive tames were they weren't common, to say the least. I think the Ichthyosaurus was the first one to introduce it. It really, really did help to know what passive tames were, because I just knew knockout tames. You just knock something out, and I'm sure that's what most of us would be thinking, and, you know, I followed a similar trail of thought. Beaver Dams. I know it was a little bit later, but still, I really, really, really just hated gathering cementing paste. And I was like, there must be a better way to gather this, and I didn't even bother to look it up. I just kept playing the game as normal and getting loads of stone and loads of chitin or keratin in a mortar and pestle to get easiest to craft. And then obviously when the Castorides came out, I still did nothing. And then I learned about Beaver Dams and all the cementing paste in Beaver Dams. You can also get rare flowers, rare mushrooms, and tons of wood if you want that too. Although usually I don't get the wood, I just drop it out of my inventory because most times you'll get quite encumbered. But yeah, getting cementing paste from Beaver Dams is so much easier than the traditional method of literally just stone, chitin, keratin. That used to be the only way that you could do it as far as I'm concerned in the mortar and pestle. But when the Castorides happened, then there was a much better way to do things, and I really just had an absolute brain melt moment when I learned this. Now, another thing that I didn't learn in at number 4 spot is knockouts can be done with a club. Okay, I just used my fists and the slingshot. I didn't know that the club would knock things out, and I think that makes me look a little bit stupid, and I'll admit that too, because surely a club, you hit something over the head with a club, it gets knocked out. But I was just using slingshots, and you know, the slingshot's fine and it works effectively if you're taming things like cob enemies in the early game. But if you want to tame like pteranodons or parasaurs, a club is a much better option. But obviously you can go up to trancaros. It wasn't maybe the biggest thing, but it makes a big difference in the early stages of the game if you've got a club to knock things out. So that's why I put it so high on the list, and I really think if I knew about this sooner, I would have got a lot more taming done in my early days. Dino food preferences is in at the number 3 spot. And, you know, you just assume if it's a carnivore, it eats meat. And if it's a herbivore, it eats berries. I knew nothing about, you know, the way that the food worked and dino food preferences. There will always be kibble, but if you don't have access to kibble, that's fine. Carnivores will generally prefer mutton, and that is the way that I usually go. I'm pretty sure the Thyla prefers cooked food. I hope I'm getting that right. I'll put something on screen if I got that terribly wrong. That would be slightly embarrassing since I played Ark for so long. But yeah, and then for berries, you just chuck whatever berries you want in. I didn't know that Megio berries were the preferable one. And then obviously you can grow your own vegetables, and then from that get even better food for those herbivores. But Megio berries, I didn't know that they were the best. I just chucked like Tinto berries, and I just chucked all of them in really. That doesn't make too much difference if you chuck all of them in, but it makes you look like you know what you're doing, and you actually do know what you're doing if you just chuck in the Megio berries, and the tames are going to go faster. Then raw meat generally is what you'll be using in the early days for carnivores. That doesn't matter too much, but if you've got prime meat, chuck that in there, and if you've got mutton, even better. When I got to do bosses, I really didn't know what boss dinos to use, and I just went around taming loads of things, and I all brought them in, and I just had a mix and match of all kinds of creatures. And I think I could have used a much better strategy, especially if I knew what the best boss dinos were. We are going back a little bit, so there wasn't as much variety, but still I probably could have stuck to Rexes or Spinos or Megatheriums and had no trouble whatever, especially for the Broodmother, which was the first boss that I ever did. If I knew about all of that, it would have made that less time consuming for me, because I didn't know how strong the boss would be, and I didn't know what creatures would be good to defeat the boss. So I just assumed just tame loads of things and see what works. I guess I had Carnos, I had Rexes, I had Dimorphs, I had a few Megatheriums, I had some Phiomias, just loads of stuff that I just chucked in, which was completely unnecessary. And if I knew about what the best boss dinos were, I would have saved myself quite a lot of headache. And in number 1, it is bowlers, because bowlers are just an amazing thing, and I didn't know what they did. I didn't even bother to craft a bowler. I was so stupid when I started playing the game. I just didn't even know what it was. Didn't even bother crafting it. Didn't even bother unlocking it. I just was so determined to get the bow and arrow. That was my focus. So I completely skipped it, and taming things like pteranodons or parasaurs even is an absolute headache without a bowler. And I made a video like way back on just 5 beginner mistakes, and one of them was not using a bowler, and I still stand to this. Please get yourself bowlers as soon as possible, and it is the number 1 thing that I wish I knew as a beginner player when coming to Ark. They are so useful, especially for pteranodons, which are a big step for a beginner. It's going to be your first flying tame, and even a parasaur, your simple Berry Gatherer is going to be far, far easier to tame. Any creature that you can bowler will be far, far easier to tame than if you did not use a bowler, unless it's just an insanely slow thing. It's still, you don't have to move as much. Anyway, that is all that I have time for today, and all 10 things. If you didn't agree with my list, comment your 10 down below. This video was also up 24 hours early on the Patreon as well, so if you want to go support me on Patreon, get some early videos. There'll also be a new Ark Let's Play series coming out over the next few weeks on there for the 2 higher tiers. So if you really do want to become a Patreon member and support me, then please do. You're going to get more content like this. You get full uncut versions of the videos, and I think you'll really like it over there. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. Now, of course, we must shout out our Patrons, Ekaterina Pichkova and Karina Thorne, who are our paid Patreon members at the moment. Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate everyone on this list. Everyone else is, of course, free members. Thanks for the support, though.